Are you a high achiever secretly wondering if that evening drink is subtly eroding your edge? Welcome to Decisions That Count, the podcast that reignites your belief in the power of your decisions. We dive deep into the science of decision making, helping you cut through the cognitive clutter to make decisions that truly propel you forward. In today's episode, you'll discover how one bold decision, choosing sobriety, can unlock unparalleled clarity and amplify your capacity for impactful decisions, especially if you're navigating high-stakes environments.
So this episode is for entrepreneurs chasing that next big idea, executives steering complex organization-driven professionals in law, medicine, and elite athletes who have to demand peak performance. Anyone who understands that every decision counts.
And it's our absolute pleasure today to welcome a true game changer. Our guest today is a former Sports Center anchor who commanded millions of viewers, a sharp mind who distilled his insights into a best-selling book, and a visionary who's helped countless high achievers reclaim their focus and drive. He's known for his direct approach, his incredible energy, and his unwavering commitment to empowering others to live their most vibrant lives. And honestly, this is a bit of a personal podcast for me today as well. So our guest has been a very consistent presence in my alcohol-free journey. And I'm so excited to welcome the brilliant James Swanwick. Hi.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Shawn, appreciate that.
Welcome. Yeah. And welcome to Singapore.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep. Sorry to be disrupting your holiday.
No, it's all good. Congratulations on 3 years alcohol-free. It was interesting what you said there. You said sobriety. I actually try to encourage folks to refrain from using the words sober and sobriety, because I feel like it has somewhat of a negative connotation. And so the phrase that I prefer is alcohol-free. Just to suggest you maybe to play around with, saying that you're 3 years alcohol-free. There's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with saying sobriety, but certainly the way that I go through life is like, oh yeah, I've been 15 years alcohol-free, as opposed to sobriety, which feels like I've got to white knuckle it and I need to stop.
Absolutely. And you know what? I do flip between the two. I think just kind of depending on who I'm talking to. Sometimes I find that when I say, I'm 3 years sober, if I'm with a particularly kind of pushy group who really want to drink, they take it more seriously than if I say I'm 3 years alcohol free. Mm. I also agree with you that there's a sobriety element that does feel very serious and feel like there was a dependency and an addiction there. And there wasn't. I'm choosing to live alcohol free for other reasons.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of gray area drinkers out there who drink consistently enough that it's compromising their life, but not enough that they would consider themselves an alcoholic or that they need to be sober. But because society really only knows those terms, it's kind of like, oh, I guess I have to say I'm sober. I guess I have to say I'm an alcoholic. The reality is that most people who are walking around labeling themselves as an alcoholic probably are not an alcoholic. In fact, you might be interested to know that the term alcoholism and alcoholic isn't even used in modern medicine anymore. They stopped using it 6-7 years ago. It's now alcohol use disorder. So I think there's a lot of people, probably your listeners, who are drinking more than they would like, but it's not so much that they're waking up in a ditch or getting arrested and getting a DUI, and they feel very uncomfortable with having to label themselves as sober or an alcoholic or 3 years sobriety.
And this is honestly what resonated so much to me about all of your content, because for me, when I stopped drinking, it was I just felt like I wasn't reaching my full potential. Mm. I felt like something was holding me back, and I didn't know what it was. And then one day I just stopped drinking, and that was it. That honestly has kind of transformed my life, and it has given me everything that I was looking for. And this is, a lot of the sobriety content that I saw before was very deprivation. It was painful. It was cold. It was addiction, and it didn't resonate with me at all. But when I look at what you're talking about, it's all about the unlocking your potential. It's what you're gaining from living an alcohol-free life. And I was like, that is it. And that is the journey that I'm on.
You get to be alcohol-free versus you need to be sober. And that's the difference, I think. Yeah. There's a lot of positive psychology and neuroscience out there that shows that the brain has an easier job focusing on what it will do as opposed to telling it what not to do. Maybe Shawn can speak to this, but my understanding is there's a bundle of nerves called the reticular activating system in our brain. And it's kind of like a laser-seeking missile, whereas if you are telling yourself, don't drink, I need to stop, I have to quit, the brain only understands the alcohol. It doesn't understand the negative command, so it keeps focusing on the alcohol, and then the propensity for drinking alcohol becomes very simple, even though you're saying don't do it. For example, let's say we're on a skiing holiday, we're skiing down the mountain. The internal dialogue is don't fall over, don't steer towards the trees. And yet we tend to steer towards the trees and fall over, don't we? That's because the brain, in my research, doesn't understand that negative command. So as that relates to alcohol, what I invite my clients to do is focus on what you will do, which is I easily only drink soda water, ice, and a piece of lime. I'm going to go up to the bar tonight, I'm going to order a soda water, and I'm going to love it. So that's a very positive command, as opposed to don't drink tonight, don't order the scotch, don't have the beer, don't have the wine. That reticular activating system doesn't hear the negative command. It just hears wine, beer, and it ends up consuming that, that substance.
Wow. It almost feels like you don't have control over your own decisions, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we touched definitely into psychology, which is definitely more your space than my space from a physiological perspective. But I think maybe just go back a bit to you, Michelle, what you said there for like performance and health and optimizing. I think everybody's trying to add things in life, right? Everyone wants to be healthier and do better, and they put more and more in. We're actually taking something out, right? As influential and as detrimental as alcohol can be transformative completely in your life, right? Mm-hmm. I think people underestimate, because I really resonate with what you said, it's the people who just walk around that they don't, they're just casual drinkers, but they're a little more than casual, but it's actually have a major impact on their performance, especially the high performers. So yeah, I just resonated with both of you there, who are actually the people who benefit the most from performance perspective. They probably don't realize how impactful alcohol is in their life.
Yeah, when I stopped drinking alcohol, it was like one domino, which then knocked over the other domino of poor nutrition, which then knocked over the other domino of stress and anxiety, which then knocked over the other domino. So one decision, which was stop drinking alcohol, go alcohol-free, opened up a whole cascade of very healthy habits for me. I joined a gym. I felt more generous towards people. I joined a charity. I raised money for a charity. Because I raised money for a charity, I got invited to raise money for a half marathon, to raise money for disadvantaged children. That introduced me to a different group of people who were of let's say, a higher caliber mindset than the people that I was spending most of my time with when I was drinking. That led me down doing a 10-day silent meditation called Vipassana, just as an experiment. Someone referenced it, and I said, maybe I'll try that. And I did it. And then that led me down the path of trying like 10 minutes of meditation each day. And then that led me down the path of gratitude. And then I started to understand these terms like paleo and keto and food. And then I started to experiment with that. So that one decision of stopping alcohol opened up all of these new modalities to me, which have profoundly, positively impacted my life since.
I love the way you put that, because it says, I find it hard to explain to sometimes to people what happened, and it doesn't happen overnight. It took time. It was 6 to 12 months of doing some deep inner work as well, because a lot of shit came up that I was honestly not quite prepared for, and I didn't think was a problem. And then all of a sudden these things kept bubbling up, these limiting beliefs, these some shame and some guilt that I was kind of holding on to. But I had the capacity to deal with them. And once I did, that's it. And again, it's another part of the dominoes.
Yes.
And I still to this day cannot believe that one decision of stopping drinking has transformed my life in the way that it has.
Yeah, beautiful. I think people mostly have a mistaken belief that if they stop drinking alcohol, all of their problems will disappear. In actual fact, my experience, and certainly the experience of many of my clients, is that when they stop drinking alcohol, they feel amazing for the first, 30, 45 days. But then when that newfound clarity seeks in, all of a sudden they go, I've been procrastinating on these decisions in my life for years. Maybe I'm not in the right marriage. Maybe I chose the wrong career. I shouldn't be staying in this job. I shouldn't be staying in this business. And that can be very uncomfortable. And so I really applaud anyone who's willing to take that step of living alcohol-free, because it does bring up a lot of stuff. And I'll just share anecdotally, I had a client, she was probably mid-50s. She'd been married for 25, 26 years. She went through our 90-day stop drinking process. And on about day 64 or 65, somewhere around there, she said on a group coaching call to the other members and to me, I realized that I need to get a divorce. And she sat her husband down that night and said she wanted a divorce. And she did. That was 3 years ago. And now she's infinitely happy, at least that's what she shared with me. But that was a very uncomfortable decision to have to make. That I call it, I write a chapter in the book called The Uncomfortable Reality of Your New Clarity. And that was a very uncomfortable reality for her from the clarity that she got from being alcohol-free. But it was absolutely the right thing to do. That was what felt true for her. And their relationship, by all accounts, had been meandering along and drifting for some years. And that was the thing that needed to kind of stop it. So it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it feels like you're running through rose bushes and you're getting cut up with the thorns and you're bloody. But I'll tell you, when you come out the other side, it's beautiful.
That's a good point. It doesn't solve problems, but it makes you better able to deal with them, I suppose, right? That's the key, is it's about being your best state to deal with whatever life throws at you. Because life is always going to be hard. It's just how are you going to position yourself for it, right?
Yeah. Before I was underwater, and like I was, gasping for air a lot of the time. Like I was struggling being a mom of 2 young children. I was struggling. I was working for Disney at the time, and we were launching Disney Plus across the region, and it was stressful. And I was a runner, and I wasn't getting anywhere with my training, and I just felt like I was just always running shy of like my goals, and I was treading water. And 6 or so months after stopping drinking, like what I always say, it's the capacity. Like I all of a sudden had the capacity to be able to deal with everything a lot better. I wasn't so emotional. I was able to see things clearly. I was able to solve the problems. I was able to get in front of everything. And it was a capacity thing.
Whereas once you were reacting to life, now you are responding to life.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are blind to it. We seek comfort in a drink or half a bottle or a bottle each night to temporarily relieve ourselves of the symptoms of stress and anxiety, which is caused from us just being with ourselves. It's the stress of just being with ourselves. But pretty soon we start drinking to relieve ourselves of the very symptoms that drinking is causing in the first place. And then we get stuck on this vicious cycle. But yeah, it's interesting because when you remove that poison, and it is a poison, alcohol is a poison, it's a very attractively packaged poison. But when you remove that, to your point, Michelle, you do get clarity, you do get focus, you're calmer, you're in a much better place to be able to deal with life. And as I said, rather than reacting in the moment, there's that little gap now from the clarity of being alcohol-free, where it might even be half a second, could be a millisecond, or it could be 5 seconds, it could be 5 minutes, where now you get to respond. Reacting is just like, I'm triggered, I'm doing this, I'm behaving this way, whereas response is like, taking a moment, okay, respond.
That's super fascinating. So one thing that's really interesting to me is we've worked on, and our company does a lot of work on decision fatigue. And that's what we talk a lot about on this podcast. So decision fatigue is when the quality of your decision declines over a long session of decision-making or in periods of stress and anxiety. And then what happens is you go through decision avoidance. So you say, my brain has had enough decisions. I don't want to make any more decisions today. I'm going to avoid decisions. Or the other thing is default decision-making. So your brain says, no more decisions. I'm going to rely on heuristics or whatever's comfortable or safe, like an unconscious decision to get me through. Why I highlight that is just because our theory behind decision fatigue is this protein called GLT1. It's related to how your cells communicate, your neurons communicate in the brain, and GLT1 is responsible for the clearance of a neurotransmitter in your synapse. So a signal comes through the neurotransmitters in your synapse to pass that signal, and then GLT1, the protein, helps to get rid of it. Alcohol can interfere with that protein. So actually the transporter can become downregulated or activities lowered. So alcohol would actually exacerbate decision fatigue or potentially cause it. And what you just said there too, that reactionary thing, it just reminds me very closely of discussions we've had around decision fatigue. So my question kind of too is those high performers that you work with, they're probably already super susceptible to decision fatigue because they're making intense decisions or they're making a lot of decisions. And one alcohol drink would just even throw it further off. So with the people you work with, those two things I described, the kind of decision avoidance and default decision making, do you see it with your clients? Is that something that...
Yes. So we have a lot of entrepreneur and executive clients, and they're making decisions all the time. And a lot of them have kids, they're married, so they're making decisions in the family. So they're running the family business, they're running the business, they've got employees, they've got staff. If they're an executive, same thing. They've got team, they've got budget decisions to make. So on and on and on it goes during the day. And by the end of the day, they just want to drink to relieve themselves of those decisions, right? And then the irony is that when we drink, it lights up our dopamine receptors like the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that even though we get that temporary relief in the moment, over time, those dopamine receptors require more and more of the alcohol in order to get the same 4th of July impact. And so then we start drinking. And then, of course, we have all the negative consequences that come with that. So in my research, people who've been drinking consistently for years, in part, have numbed dopamine receptors where they're chasing something to try to give them the same level of excitement or release in the brain and in the body that they were getting from that alcohol. To talk to the high achievers part, it's interesting because a lot of folks, when they're justifying their drinking, will say, oh, I don't really spend that much on my drinking. It might be $5,000, $10,000 a year. To me, that's still a lot. But I don't think it's anything compared to the money that they're not generating because of the consequences of their drinking. Mm-hmm. So let's take an entrepreneur, for example. Let's say they're doing $1 million a year in revenue. And I say to them, with your drinking habits the way they are, you're probably foggy, distracted, tired. You're not hiring the right person. You're not firing the right person. You're just, you're like a headless chicken running around. Like, how would you describe your performance in your business? And most of the time, they'll tell me a 6 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, sometimes a 7, but it's rarely an 8 or a 9 out of 10 when they're drinking. I go, okay, that's interesting. Let's say you're a 6 out of 10, you make $1 million. If you were alcohol-free for many months and now you had clarity, focus, and energy, and you were sleeping well and you were responding instead of reacting, how would that show up in your business? And he'd say, oh, well, I'd hire someone better. I'd make better decisions. I wouldn't make as many mistakes. I said, great. So how would you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? He or she would say, oh, probably an 8 or a 9. I said, okay, and how much additional revenue or how much revenue in your business would you make if you were operating at an 8 or a 9 out of 10? And often they'll say probably double, maybe like another half. And I go, okay, well, let's just say conservatively in this scenario, you'd make $1.5 million instead of the $1 million revenue. That means your drinking habits are costing you $500,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And then I just pause and it's like it's like a mic drop. Like the penny drops in their mind and they go, oh, my drinking is costing me $500,000 in revenue that I don't generate because I have decision fatigue, because then the decisions I make are not smart ones. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty fascinating way to get through to someone who's money focused, like the financial cost of their drinking habits.
And I think maybe the good news is there's been a trend towards people understanding how important brain health at large is. And if, for everything you just said, like people are realizing we're the sum of our decisions, right? The decisions, our success and our happiness in life is the decisions that we make and some that are made for us. Mm. And alcohol is a massive influencer of our capacities to make quality decisions, right? Yes. So no, I love that story. You just maybe have to spin the angle just so they see it a little bit differently. But it costs us money, and I bet you if you do a similar, kind of quantitative analysis of their relationships, right? I bet you they'll have a similar score with their relationships, but without alcohol, that will also go to an 8 or a 10, right? So happiness, quality of life, spiritual, all those things would probably increase.
Let's do a mathematical calculation, if we may.
It's too early.
So let's just say, I'm going to pull out my calculator here, okay? So let's just say in that scenario, we have an entrepreneur who makes $1 million a year and he's drinking and feels like a 6 out of 10 because he's distracted and foggy and irritable. Mm-hmm. And if he stopped drinking alcohol, he'd feel like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, and then he'd make better strategic decisions and make an additional phone call at the end of the day or do a better deal. And he says that he'd make an additional $500,000 a year if he was alcohol free. Mm-hmm. So if we go $500,000 divided by 365 days of the year, every day that that entrepreneur decides to drink is costing him $1,369. Mm-hmm. Now, if he says I'm only drinking 2 drinks a day, I'm like, okay, well, let's divide it by 2. That's every drink that he drinks is costing him $684.93. Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And when you think about that, $684 is what it costs you every time you choose to drink attractively packaged poison that we call alcohol. That's pretty frightening. Now, that doesn't even reference or account for marital strain. Mm-hmm. Let's say in this hypothesis that gentleman has marital strain and he's heading for divorce. Divorce can be pretty costly, can't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cost people millions of dollars, stress, pain. Let's just say that the stress from drinking is causing health challenges. Maybe he's sick once or twice a month from his business and just can't work. He's tired. He's bedridden because he's hungover or because he's got the flu, because his immune system's been shot from drinking all the alcohol. Imagine 2 days a month not working. That's 24 days a year. What could you do with 24 additional days in your business every year? That's a lot. Then you've got the emotional impact, which is, let's say in this scenario, this gentleman has kids and the kids are drifting away from him. He's not as present with them. He's distracted. And the kids notice that, either on a conscious or an unconscious level. And what do kids do? They mirror our behaviors. And now they're going to go and do something similar, or they're going to feel resentment towards dad or mum because they didn't get the attention and the love that they craved, like we all do as children. How's that going to impact them? And so now later on in life, that shows up with the kids not reaching out to him in this scenario proactively. He has to keep saying, oh, do you want to meet up? Oh, I'm busy, as opposed to the kids reaching out saying, hey, Dad, you want to meet up? Mm-hmm. So now his quality of life in that scenario is severely compromised, and on it goes.
I mean, I go back to my previous comment, like, what can you add to your life that'll have a bigger effect than taking that away, right? Like, it's just so impactful. And again, we're not talking about people who are, doing a bottle of alcohol a night, right? This can even just be casual. A couple drinks can have that type of effect on you. So
I often say to folks, you don't need to push your foot on the accelerator to go faster. You just need to take your foot off the brake, and then you'll just naturally go faster.
Fantastic. I like that one.
So it's not necessarily addition. It's like, let's just remove the stuff that's holding us back. And alcohol is literally a ball and chain around our ankle. If we just remove that, well, now we can run. Now we can go through life, not necessarily effortlessly, but let's just say it's a much smoother ride.
That one of my biggest challenges was always was the culture, and the reason why I didn't give it up. I wanted to give it up a lot longer, for a long time before I actually did. And it was that every single person in my life drank, my family, my husband, my friends. And I felt like I was letting them down by not drinking. And I felt like I needed to drink in order to have that connection with people. There was never a physical dependency on alcohol for me. It was all psychological. It was all that need for connection. You talk a bit about this in the book. Can you just share how people can kind of maybe overcome those limiting beliefs?
So the reason why we're so pressured to drink, or we feel that pressure to drink, we can trace back to hundreds of thousands of years ago when we were roaming the earth and we were in tribes of 160. You may have heard Dunbar's tribe, where he said that we were generally speaking in groups of about 160. Now, if you were ostracized from the tribe for whatever reason, that meant certain death, because a rival tribe would kill you, or the bear or the wolf would eat you. And that shows up now in the modern world, with us still carrying that reptilian brain fear that if we go against the tribe, we're going to get kicked out. So that shows up in the modern world, where friends are saying, hey, can I get you a drink? Let's catch up for drinks. The family are like trying to be nice and hospitable. Can I get you a drink? And the idea of saying, oh, no, thank you. And then they challenge us, why aren't you drinking? That hits our reptilian brain and we go, oh, fear of death. Now, of course, in the modern world, we don't have a saber-toothed tiger chasing us and a rival tribe isn't going to kill us, right? So it makes no sense. It's an irrational fear in the modern world, but nevertheless, that fear in our subconscious is still very much there. And we've got smiling assassins everywhere. We've got the waiters and the waitresses saying, hello, Michelle, hello, Shawn, can I get you started with a glass of wine? They're essentially saying, hello, Michelle, hello, Shawn, can I get you started with a glass of regret in the morning? Can I get you a bottle of 10 unwanted pounds? Yeah. Hey, would you like a restless night's sleep and some shame and regret in the morning? And they're doing it with a smile on their face. And our friends and our family are doing it as well. And of course, they're just trying to be hospitable. And I'm sure you guys, when you've had friends come and join you at your home, you say, can I get you a wine? Can I get you a beer? What would you like? We're well-intentioned. But the reality is that we're offering people and we're being offered attractively packaged poison. And so it's very challenging for us to politely decline because everyone's smiling as we're drinking this poison. That's the norm, right? That's the default. And the cultural conditioning has us believe that that is the default. And so God forbid that Michelle might say, oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to drink. What? You're disrupting the status quo. So that's the fear, and I get it. However, in 2025, there is a cultural change that is happening. There is a tidal wave of change where society is now increasingly becoming aware of the negative effects and consequences of alcohol and are much more inviting and open to people living an alcohol-free lifestyle. Not necessarily because they're sober or they're an addict or they're having to surrender to a higher power or they're an alcoholic, any of that kind of stuff, but because they're just choosing to be alcohol-free. And whereas before it was kind of like taboo, or if you shared with someone that you weren't drinking, you would fear that those people would go, oh, Michelle must be an alcoholic. She must have a drinking problem. Mm-hmm. Now, thankfully, those judgments, those perceptions are falling away. So I always share with our clients the way that you handle a smiling assassin who's offering you a drink. It doesn't matter so much what you say. It matters more how you say it. Most people are going, oh, geez, I wish I could have a drink, but no, sorry, no, I'm not drinking at the moment. Sorry. And then, of course, as you say it that way, and you're almost apologizing for it, and your body language is, oh, drinking obviously equals fun and not drinking equals deprivation and pain. You're now parlaying that energy onto the person who's offering you the drink. And now both of you in this scenario are thinking drinking is fun and pleasure and not drinking is pain and deprivation. However, if you go into that situation, someone's inviting you to have a drink and you go, oh, no, thanks, I'm good actually. Have you got soda water? Bought some alcohol-free drinks actually. Yeah, I've been like 90 days alcohol-free and been sleeping better. It feels pretty good, actually. Have you got any soda water? And you say it like that. The energy transfer and the body language that's coming across is, I'm thrilled to be alcohol-free. Like I'm owning it. I'm confident about it. And then the person who's inviting you to drink can relax because all they care about is that you're pleasant to be around, that you're having a nice time. And now everyone can just get on with life. So again, it matters more how you say something rather than how you say it. And there's a lot of study on body language which shows that persuading people and influencing people is really only 7% what you say and 93% how you say it. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? It doesn't really matter what you say. It doesn't matter your words. It's the way that you share those words.
You couldn't be more right there. And I think for the first year I made excuses. Oh, I'm training for a marathon. Oh, I've had a stomach bug. I'm on antibiotics. I'd reeled off the excuses. And I think that's because I wasn't confident in my decision. I think there was a lot of self-doubt. Is like, can I really do this? Is this going to be permanent? But I think, a year in, all of a sudden it was like, oh, no, thanks, I don't drink. Can I have this instead? And I was confident in my decision, and I was a lot more kind of fun and happy, and I was excited to be out, not dreading going out because I would have to deal with not drinking. I was looking forward to the occasion, and I was looking forward to having an alternative. So it's just how you put it was just perfect.
I think we're in this kind of transition too, because I wonder if people said similar things or had similar feeling awkward when they refused a cigarette years and years and years ago, right? And now like people smoke, like why would you smoke? Obviously it's terrible for you, right? Like alcohol, the science is pretty clear how bad it is, right? And I hope in 30 years or so when people drink, it's more like, but why would you drink? That's so bad for you, just like cigarettes are, right? So I wonder if cigarettes went through the same transition where there's a social awkwardness. I think the good thing though is, unlike cigarettes, decades ago, is people can go online and see, people like you two, and they can see kind of a peer and saying, oh, look at, they're doing it. So I do have an in-group. I do have a social group that I can relate to, that I can look up to. So hopefully this transition kind of happens much quicker than the tobacco industry kind of did. So it's just really interesting, the parallels may be there for something we know is bad for us, but society hasn't quite figured it out.
I've also noticed it's like the new flex. Especially when you're hanging around with kind of entrepreneurs and athletes, and you're hanging out at the ice bath club, and people are doing some really interesting stuff, and people are ambitious, they've got big goals. It's the new flex, and a lot of people are like, I'm not wasting my time drinking anymore because I've got bigger things to do. Are you seeing that with the people you're working with?
I am, yes. I feel like in 20 to 30 years, we're going to look back on alcohol with the same level of disdain we currently do cigarettes. It's happening. Yeah. There are cancer warnings on alcoholic drinks now in Ireland. They're the first country to bring it out. The health surgeon in the United States in January of 2025 said that the US would roll it out over the next 4 or 5 years. So that's coming in the US. Australia is looking at it. Whether or not that is the reason that shifts the public perception, I'm not entirely confident that those warnings will actually shift behavior. But the fact that they're doing it in the first place shows you that there is a cultural change that's going on. It is crazy. I look back on those doctor ads from the 1950s and early 60s of doctors smoking Camel cigarettes and saying, Camel cigarettes, the cigarette preferred by the world's leading doctors, and they're in their white lab coats. And you just go, what were we thinking? We're going to look back in 20 to 30 years at us drinking and our drinking habits and say the same thing. What were we thinking? And I don't think that a lot of these Hollywood celebrities who have their own liquor brands, I don't think that their support of alcohol and liquor is going to age particularly well. I don't think history is going to judge them particularly fondly. I have much admiration for folks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Ryan Reynolds and George Clooney. I think they do wonderful work in the world, and they're very charitable by all accounts. But I can't reconcile that they all have liquor brands and that they're peddling their poison for a profit. That's what they're doing. And so, there's still years and minds to change. But, we'll look back and just go, what were we thinking with this alcohol thing? Crazy.
Yeah. I actually just love very quickly just to actually go back in time and hear a little bit about your personal story and what was the trigger for you to stop drinking? What helped you make that decision?
I was a socially acceptable drinker growing up in my native country of Australia, in that I had 2 or 3 drinks most nights of the week, and on the weekends I would drink heavier, and often I would get drunk. During the week, not enough to get drunk, 2-3 drinks. Bottle of wine, half a bottle of wine, couple of beers here and there. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't wake up in a ditch. But I had that level of socially acceptable drinking from age 16, 17, all the way until 35. So that's almost 2 decades, 20 years. I was living in Los Angeles, California at the time, and I remember one morning I woke up and I was feeling really tired and irritable, and it just dawned upon me. I was like, you're a douchebag. And I was like, that's a weird thought. And I realized I was envious of other people. I was irritable. I was stressed. I was a bit snippy with friends. I had a very mediocre career, was modestly paid, and just filled with envy and not rage, but just like whatever. And that feeling kind of stuck with me for a few weeks. And then I was in Austin, Texas in 2010. I was at that year's South by Southwest Festival. And I went out to an industry party on a Friday night, and I had 2 Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics. And I went back to my hotel 15 minutes outside of downtown Austin. I went to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and I looked in the mirror and I just felt and looked blah. And blah means mediocre, average. Again, I wasn't rock bottom. I didn't do anything crazy the night before, but I looked at myself with weathered skin and I had like fat rolls over my pajamas and I was tired and irritable. I could taste the gin. And I went next door to the hotel to this IHOP, which is an American fast food chain called International House of Pancakes. And I went in, sat in this booth, and there were very kind of unhealthy looking people sitting around me eating all-you-can-eat pancakes with whipped cream. And I remember looking out of this booth window at a very unsightly freeway, and it was an overcast day. And I just thought to myself, what are you doing in an IHOP? And what are you doing with your life? And the drift had got me. There's a book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. He also wrote Think and Grow Rich. And in Outwitting the Devil, he talks about how the biggest thing that can disrupt our life is the drift, allowing the drift of life, the mediocrity to just creep in and just take us down this path over years and decades. And in that moment, I realized the drift had got me. My drinking, which was 2 or 3 drinks a night, more on weekends, had led me to put on 35 pounds of unwanted body weight, irritable, stressed, envy. When my parents would phone me from Australia to catch up, I would see the phone. My parents always call it an inopportune time. And in that moment, in that IHOP, I just said, enough. Just quit for 30 days. That's all. Just 30 days, try to reset, sleep a little better and see how you feel. And I did. And the 30 days, I lost 13 pounds, which is about 5 kilograms, 6 kilograms, just fell off me. I slept better. I suddenly had an opportunity to audition to become a television anchor on a show called SportsCenter on ESPN. And I credit the clarity and focus that I was experiencing from being alcohol-free to helping me get that opportunity and ultimately landing that job. I started going to the gym. I went up to the LA Fitness and Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles and just started lifting weights for the first time. I did a spinning class. I started eating well. I attracted a great romantic relationship. And I just kept going and going and going. So I was like, this feels pretty good. I think I might just keep doing this thing. Can I get to 60 days? Can I get to 90? And then I said, let's see if I can do 6 months. I got to 1 year. I was back in Austin at the corresponding South by Southwest Festival in 2011. And I walked into the Luster Pearl Bar in Rainey Street in downtown Austin, and I ordered what I thought would be a celebratory Budweiser. 1 year alcohol-free, I'm going to celebrate with a drink. And at the last moment, just as I put it to my mouth, I put it down and I thought about it. And I thought, wow, in 1 year, I've got clarity, focus, energy. I've got this great romantic partner. I'm hosting a television show. I've got the body that nature intended me to have. I'm responding versus reacting. When my parents phone, I take their call and I'm actually happy to talk to them. This is pretty good. Why would I drink this? And I said to the barman, I said, excuse me, sir, I've changed my mind. And I tipped him and I walked out and I haven't so much as picked up a drink since. And like compound interest, it's just got better and better and better. I don't feel like I'm, super ripped or chiseled in my life. I just feel like I have the body that nature intended me to have. I sleep very well. I have conscious communication. I've done personal development programs. I spend time with my parents. I enjoy that. I'm just less irritable. I don't have that envy. I'm not jealous. I'm prone to it on occasion, but that's not they're not adjectives I would use to describe how I am and how I am most of the time. So that's how I came to be here today, which is making that one decision to stop drinking and then allowing the profound benefits of that to compound over many years. And gosh, it's been 15 years now.
And you like the person you've become.
Yeah. I love the person I've become.
Yeah.
And I'll be 50 this year. And I used to think, wow, 50's so old. Like, what the hell, 50? And I feel like I'm in my 30s. I don't feel any different than when I was in my 30s. I feel energetic and sleep well. But I think most of the time I'm walking around feeling like life is an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I'm prone to bouts of 2 out of 10s and 3 out of 10s. But when they come now, it's like having this tool belt of modalities from which to pull from. It's like, Okay, now I can pull on that modality I learned. Okay, I'm in a calm state now where I can respond and handle that challenge much better. Whereas when I was drinking, I was more reactive, or I would procrastinate on how I was going to handle a challenging situation by drinking the alcohol, because it would give me this temporary relief. And I would submit most people in the world, that's how they're living, right? Like, life is too hard, there's challenges. Let me just numb out for a couple of hours and deal with it later. And then the later comes, you go, let me just drink a little bit more of this and numb out and deal with it later.
I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, okay, I'm 3 years in. I've got another 12 to get to you were. And I'm like, bring it on. Like, I can't, and the reason why I ask if you like who you are, because I didn't like who I was when I drank. I wasn't proud of who I was. And I can say now I'm really, really proud of the person that I've become. And I'm really like who I am. And all of those things that happen now that are amazing. Like, I'm enjoying my life. I really, truly am. And if this is just the start, I'm like, hell yeah. Why would I ever pick up another drink?
Yeah. Well, to James' point, it was your foot was on the brake, right? Like, and I love that idea, because that's exactly what it is, right? Like, you were holding yourself back before, I suppose, with the booze.
Yeah. That's beautiful that you feel that way.
Yeah.
And I keep referencing compound interest. The longer that you live alcohol free, the better and better it gets.
Yeah.
And I would submit your natural state and your best state is an alcohol free state. It's when we drink that it's not our natural energy coming through. In fact, the word alcohol, many believe, comes from an Arabic word called alcohol, which means body-eating spirit. It's like this spirit inside of you that possesses you. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So if you remove that spirit, what then flows through? The natural you, right? And it seems like you've fallen in love with the natural you.
I have. And you talk about kind of that spirit. There's science behind it, right? Because we've had conversations before. I had about kind of how alcohol impacts your decision making when you're intoxicated. So because I had this lingering thought. So when people say to you, "Oh, alcohol reveals the real you," so when you're drunk, that's the real you coming out, and like. I wasn't nice when I was drunk, I sometimes I'd be emotional, sometimes I would pick fights, sometimes and I really worried, is that me? Is that the real me coming out? And so I did a podcast episode with Shawn on the upward spiral. And my question for you is, is that the real me? Are those bad decisions that I'm making when I'm intoxicated, is that the real me coming out?
I think we just need to think of alcohol like any neuroactive substance. It's a poison, right? So if someone's on cocaine or meth, is that them? No, it's them on a substance, right? And I feel the same way for alcohol. It's not you. It's not the real you coming out. It's you on a substance that alters your neurochemistry, right? I mean, your prefrontal cortex gets massively affected. That's your personality. So it's changing you. It's not the real you coming out. And I think, a lot of the guilt and shame is when people hear that, they're like, oh my God, is this me? Right? And I don't believe at all. It's you on a substance.
And it's
any neurosubstance. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not you. You're making bad decisions when you drink, okay? Bad decisions could be going home with somebody. Bad decision could be putting yourself into unsafe situations. Bad decision could be eating a horrible kebab at the end of the night. But you don't have control over those decisions. Is that right?
Well, the state you're making those decisions in is not you, right?
Yeah.
So it's an altered state of decision making. And that's what alcohol does, right? One of many things that alcohol can certainly do for you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's frightening. For me now, looking back on it and looking back at, the 15, 20 years that I was drinking, a similar sort of age when I stopped was 35, is that's frightening. Mm-hmm. That maybe I didn't have as much control as I thought I did over myself and my decision making when I was intoxicated.
Well, and people can see, like, and when you're in your IHOP, which I didn't know stands for International House of Pancakes, by the way. That's a big learning for me. But like, and you see a reflection or you think of yourself, like you probably realize, like, that's not me, right? Like with alcohol and whatnot, it's just not, and I mean, I've certainly experienced in my own life, it's not you. And you're conscious that you can do better and be better, and that doesn't define you, right? But I think that the real you comes out as a misnomer. I think that's not what, not the truth.
It's interesting that all of the things that the modern world celebrates, we're talking about ice bath clubs today and, cold plunge and hot thing and meditation, all these things are just, they're all so natural. Like they're all just there, but we kind of position them as like, oh, wow, this amazing new breakthrough. Did you know that just having a cold shower will reduce your stress and anxiety? I'm like, well, yeah, that's what people were doing for millions of years, right? It's like they were swimming out in a cold creek and their stress and anxiety was reduced. But today we like go, oh, you got to try this new incredible breakthrough. I mean, it's fascinating how these things can support us, but isn't it also fascinating that we're celebrating these things as profound breakthroughs that are actually just were always there at our disposal?
Totally agree. I'm one of those causes too. So like meditation, right? For most of my scientific career, I'd be like, like that's spiritual, right? Like that's not scientific. It's a spiritual exercise. But no, then we got a huge project to jump into meditation for elite performing athletes, like the top of the world athletes. And so I actually dove into the literature. It's not just spiritual. Actually, the benefits you can gain from a neurophysiological perspective, you throw people in MRIs when they meditate, the structure of their brain changes, right? So yeah, to your point, people have been meditating for thousands of years, but I didn't realize that a lot of this stuff has profound clinical research behind it now that shows the benefits to it. Meditation is a fantastic one that I never touched my whole life, but once I read the science to it, I started to try to practice in my own life just because it's incredible what it can do for you. But there are cynics like me, I suppose, that I had to wait for the science to come out. But a lot of that stuff we're learning now is deeply important, and particularly meditation for building resilience. So our capacity to handle those low points. We all go through those ones or twos or threes, right? We're all bottom out sometimes. But how our brain can handle those stressors, meditation can help build profound resilience to that. And I'm talking like team leadership, so how you deal with other people's emotion and management to your own, right? When anything untowards happens in your life, meditation can be a great boon to you. In your toolbox, you said, of things to use, highly encourage people to look to meditation. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it's a great example though, because you're absolutely right. It seems like a profound breakthrough. But I think it's just science is catching up.
A gratitude practice can also reduce cravings by 30-something%. I don't know the exact study, but that's pretty fascinating as well. In fact, we have all of our clients at our organization do a practice called the Daily 20, where they must write down 20 things they're grateful for each and every day. So 3 or 4 or 5 things to write down that you're grateful for is cute and nice. But what we find is that 20 things, like we're really kind of like, oh, what else can I be grateful for? That starts to activate that reticular activating system I referenced earlier, the RAS. And so now we go through each day and we just naturally see more evidence of things to be grateful for. And if a gratitude practice of some type, whether it be the Daily 20 that I just referenced or something else, can reduce cravings by 30-something%, that's astonishing. Imagine how your life would transform just by having a third less cravings every day.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is. Once the study, we were a bit sidetracked, but I love the study that just recently came out too, just about taking things out of your life. Is a study was done and they took away the internet on people's phones for like 2 weeks or something like that. So they had their phones, but they couldn't access the internet. And they looked at measures of depression, anxiety, quality of life, and things like that. But the key metric was the depression. So after like 2 weeks of not going on your phone and scrolling social, whatever you're doing on your internet, 2 weeks, actually the effect on depression was stronger than a pharmaceutical drug versus like an antidepressant, like a selective serotonin reuptake, like one of those classical antidepressant drugs. Actually just being more conscious of the time that you spend on the internet and doom scrolling could do more for your depression than some type of pill. So yeah, it's just really interesting, these new studies coming out, but it's a real shift in science, to be honest, away from finding pills to solve our problems, to looking at the basis of health as to why or what we should change. So like before you had high blood pressure, a physician gave you a pill for high blood pressure. They didn't ask, why do you have high blood pressure, right? So I think we're seeing this big shift, though, which is good. And alcohol is going to be a component of that, right? Physicians should be asking you, how much are you drinking every day? Because, anxiety, depression, all these different things, that could be the root cause.
I can share anecdotally that one of the reasons why I'm so physically active and therefore leaner than maybe what I was when I wasn't as physically active was one simple habit change, which was each night, just before I went to sleep, I prepared my gym clothes and put them at the end of the bed on the floor. So when I woke up in the morning, I had a visual cue of seeing shorts, shirt, socks, shoes, water bottle, and that's the first thing I saw. And so I would just get up kind of like groggy, put the clothes on, and then any story that may have come into my head, which is like, just sleep in today or don't do it, was extinguished, because now I'm actually got the gym clothes on and now I'm like going out the door. And that kept the momentum of daily exercise going for years. Just that one simple change.
You took away the decision. Keep
decision. So we talk on here a lot about protocols to reduce decision fatigue. So if you're making 35,000 decisions a day, the brain can't handle it. And this is why, as the day goes on, you get brain fog, you struggle to focus, you eat more easily distracted. And this is why particularly, and this affects kind of drinking, is in the evening, you lose your willpower. You come in from a hard day's work. If you're, like Shawn mentioned earlier, you either avoid making a decision or you default decision making. And if you come home from work and you're trying not to drink, but the default, and you're suffering from decision fatigue after a long day, the default is to pour yourself a glass of wine. It's harder to make the decision to say, no, I'm going to have something else. I'm going to have a water. But coming back to kind of the protocols to reduce decision fatigue is reducing the amount of decisions that you've got to make early in the morning so you can focus on the most important ones. So if you are training, knowing what you're doing, what type of training you're doing, how many sets, are you going to the gym, are you going for a run, what's the distance you're going for, knowing that ahead of time. Having your kit laid out so you're not having to wake up in the morning and make decisions on where's my kit, what am I wearing, where am I going, what am I doing. If those decisions are pre-planned, you've removed them all. So again, you get up and you go and do it, and eventually it becomes a habit, which creates an embedded neural pathway. Anyway, again, making it even easier. And then there are other things that you can do. Wear the same outfit every day, look like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. Removing those decisions, thinking about your day as a decision list rather than a to-do list. So what are the important decisions that I've got to make today? Make the most important ones in the morning when you've got the clarity and ability to do so, the less important ones in the afternoon. And for God's sake, don't use social media in the morning, because every time you're on Instagram for 5 minutes of scrolling is hundreds of decisions. Every time you scroll past something, you're wasting like the good decisions of your day in the morning just by scrolling.
And coming back to alcohol, when you're tired at the end of the day, it's in part because you've been scrolling first thing in the morning and because you've made so many decisions throughout the day.
Yeah.
And now you want to crave that temporary relief from the alcohol.
It's your default decision, right? It can become just that default that, because decision fatigue used to be called ego depletion. So kind of like willpower, if you want to think of it like that. We call it decision fatigue more now, I think, because we're understanding the physiology behind it, not just the psychology. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, it's going to be a lot more difficult because if you're used to that beer or that glass of wine, you're going to default to that decision.
Yeah.
And that's just it could be an unconscious choice that you do for the safe thing, right? So yeah, absolutely. And we talk about habits and habit forming is you have to be conscious of decision fatigue now. And by the way, like our parents never had to worry about this. This is our current society that our parents were making hundreds of decisions a day. We're making 35,000. So it's not something that we've had to think about before. We've never had to think of quality decisions as a limited commodity. Now we have to. And the high performers, from hedge fund managers to elite athletes, everybody that we've talked to at the peak of their game, they do kind of what you do by putting your gym strip out, right? You're eliminating mundane decisions so you can focus on the most important decisions, right? Because if there's only a limited number, you're gonna save those decisions for the things that matter to you. So it's actually something consistent we've seen across a lot of the peak people is they take those mundane decisions out of their life.
If you said it's 35,000 daily decisions, most people today in the modern world, is there a way to halve that each day, or how many decisions can we eliminate if we're just conscious about that the scrolling is affecting our decision making, that the alcohol is affecting our decision making?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two considerations. One is just sheer number of decisions. And Michelle's absolutely right. And I used to get up and I'd do Reddit until the family woke up, right? Count how many decisions you're making. It's hundreds, right? Every time you flick up or down, like, share, whatever, and just do TikTok, and so you'll start to realize how many hundreds of decisions you're making before you get out of bed, right? So that's quantity of decision making. But then the background of your psychological state can also influence it. So if you're stressed, anxiety, if you're hungover, right, you're going to suffer from decision fatigue much quicker. So that's kind of more long-term to build that resilience, make sure that you're in a healthy state to manage anxiety and stress better, but then also just sheer quantity. But it's something everybody, and this is one of the reasons for our podcast, is this is probably one of the most important cognitive disablers of our time, and it's a blind spot for most people. They don't realize the consequences of decision fatigue. And kind of like mindfulness, which I alluded to, is the science now is really starting to show. So from banking to judicial decisions, judges who have decision fatigue, if you're going, not that any of us will, for a parole hearing, make sure you go in the morning. When you see your doctor, physicians' decisions change from decision fatigue. See your doctor in the morning, right? Because they may recommend something different in the afternoon because they have decision fatigue.
I think even bringing it back to alcohol as well, though. See your friends in the morning, see your friends for lunch. Don't see them in the evening, because the chances are that you're going to be suffering from decision fatigue in the evening, and it's going to make it harder to say no to that drink in the evening versus doing it in the morning. So I think when you start to understand the physiological, because it is a physical problem, decision fatigue, there's a buildup of synaptic waste in the brain. When you understand that there's a physical barrier that's affecting your decision making, you can start to make better choices when it comes to maybe reducing your alcohol intake.
And if decision fatigue, I know it's a bold statement, if it is the most important disabler of our time, of our society, and it is GLT-1, which is kind of our leading theory right now, alcohol is the worst possible thing to exacerbate it. It's the worst thing you can do, because it's going to make that condition so much worse because it's acting on the same mechanism of action, right? So I think the effects of alcohol are being compounded by the demands society's putting on our brain, right? I think our parents could have gone through, could have drank and had less consequences to their life as us nowadays, because we're just doing so much every day, and the impact of alcohol is just so substantive that's going to get worse and worse and worse for people.
So previous generations' alcohol consumption, the negative effects maybe weren't as bad as they could be in today's modern world because of technology and because of the many more decisions that we have to make.
Absolutely. I mean, think of just the productivity changes of your average worker. So, two components. One, we used to do a lot of physical labor. Now, most people make money from their brain, right? The decisions that we make and whatnot. But also how many, if you're a pipeline drafter, right, or an architect, how long would it take you to drop architectural plans by pencil and ruler, right? Nowadays, it's all compressed into such a smaller period of time with technology. So the decisions and the requirements of our brain are greater than ever before. AI is making it even worse, right? So as like a researcher, it used to take me 8 hours for research. I can do in 8 minutes, right? And so everything is being compressed. And so the demands on our brain are higher and higher and higher. And so now that we're running at peak performance, now throwing a little bit of booze is going to the effects are going to be far more compounded than before, right? It's just, I guess one way to think of it is our brains now are at max, right? We're at our physical limitation of the brain. The organ itself is maxed out, whereas generations before it wasn't.
So if I was to help my stop drinking clients and my followers or anyone who follows this alcohol-free movement, what would I say to them? What would I invite them to do practically so as to reduce their cravings for alcohol at the end of the day?
Well, I think one good step is to explain decision fatigue. So a lot of people have never heard of it before, And it's not mental fatigue. Mental fatigue is when you feel tired. You need that cup of coffee, that can of Red Bull. You need to increase your wakefulness, right? Decision fatigue is not that. Decision fatigue is the quality of your decisions. So I think explaining that to them and the consequences, the defaults and the decision avoidance, right? Because then they understand maybe when they're going to be most susceptible to taking that drink, right? If it's their default decision, it's going to be a lot tougher near the end of the day because they could default to it, right? So I think first explaining what decision fatigue is and building awareness around the concept is very important. But then also getting them to understand that decision fatigue is a major, because you work with the top, right? That decision fatigue is going to affect these people hugely. And one drink is going to just exasperate that condition, right? So really getting them to see that the effects of alcohol just are compounded in their decision making with the way the world is now.
James, we could keep talking to you forever because this has just been so interesting, and it's obviously an incredibly personal one for me as well today. Just before we go, can you please tell us a little bit about your book and what people can expect, and also a little bit about your course as well?
The book is called Clear, a neuroscience-based approach to help high achievers quit alcohol without AA, rehab, or willpower. And I've interviewed a number of neuroscientists about how the brain works when we drink alcohol to really explain the science of what's going on when we consume this attractively packaged poison. I outline practical ways in which we can either reduce or stop entirely. There's a whole section of recipes of mocktails, so really nice, beautiful, delicious alcohol-free alternatives. And it really inspires the reader to love living an alcohol-free lifestyle. It's not something that they need to do or they need to stop alcohol and be sober, but it's a lifestyle that they get to choose. And the key word there, I think, is lifestyle. The name of my organization is called Alcohol-Free Lifestyle. It's a style of life. And that style of life is clarity, focus, energy, great sleep habits, living a life of appreciation instead of expectation, some meditation, good nutritional choices, all those kind of things that I think enables our natural state to flow through. It's available at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/clear. We have a 90-day stop drinking process, which is called Project 90. The University of Washington did a scientific study on this process in 2023, the results of which suggested a 98% reduction in drinking amongst the study participants. And that Project 90 process now I've been coaching folks on since about 2018. And that helps a lot of high achievers like executives, entrepreneurs, athletes, physicians, attorneys. You'd be shocked at how many ER doctors need to stop drinking who come to us. It's like it makes you really question who's behind the scalpel when you go in for surgery. I'm not suggesting that they're drunk when they're doing the operation, but they're certainly probably tired, irritable.
Suffering from decision fatigue.
Suffering from decision fatigue. And it's frightening to me to see so many of our clients coming through who are that type of demographic, people who have impactful decisions to make. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, we get to do great work, which is to support them to choose an alcohol-free lifestyle. And I'll just leave you with this. I don't know of any modality that can create such generational impact in a family than helping someone get off drugs, including alcohol. I don't think the president of the United States can create that much impact, or a judge, or a fireman, or a police officer, or an inspirational, motivational speech. Imagine if you can fundamentally transform someone's life by helping them get off alcohol, how that drifts down through the bloodline. The wife, the husband's impacted, the children are impacted, the friends, the community, the colleagues, the barista serving you coffee in the morning is impacted by you being smiling and happy as opposed to irritable and snappy. Mm-hmm. Wow. What an opportunity to transform generations from just choosing to be alcohol-free. The positive effects of that are profound and last, like I keep saying, generations.
I love that. so much. That's made me happy with my life choices.
Well, congratulations as well on 3 years. That's incredible. And long may it continue.
Oh, for sure.
And I also just wanted to add one last thing. People I hear a lot say, oh, I'll just drink on a special occasion. And I would just submit, every day that you are living alcohol-free is the special occasion. The special occasion isn't when you get to drink poison. The special occasion is living the best life that you can lead. And in my proposition, that's being alcohol-free.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And it was so ingrained in my life. And I still, to this day, cannot believe how much of an impact it's had. And we talk about breaking that generation. You know, I'm the first person in my family to stop drinking. And I'm so excited about what that's showing my kids, that they've got a choice. And yeah, this is a good way to live. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and thank you for all of the content that you've pushed out there, because it really does help, and it's helped me on my journey. Just especially, like I said earlier, it was all about unlocking my potential, and I got so much of it from you. You know, it wasn't about the sobriety and the deprivation. This is what your life can be and will be if you live alcohol free. And it was a breath of fresh air. And yeah, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Michelle. Thank you, Shawn.
Yes.
And we're going to link to everything below. So for our listeners and viewers, we'll link down to all of James's links. Please reach out. And as always, make every decision count. And thank you very much for watching. Bye.